Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the 6 power moves for the Data Analyst 2.0. We all know that every organization loves data, and today we're going to be talking about how business operations and analyst teams can take the reins of data and make their businesses catapult into an impact generation machine. For today's webinar, we have two fantastic speakers, Matt and Jonathan. I'll let them introduce themselves, but don't forget that there is a Q&A button over there. So if you have any questions, feel free to send that along and we'll respond as soon as we can. But without further ado, I'll let Matt introduce himself and then hand it over to Jonathan as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt McKittrick. I'm a managing director with Moss Adams. And for those of you who don't know Moss Adams, we are a middle market accounting firm with about 3,800 employees. We serve the West Coast heavily and have locations as far as Texas area and a few even on the East Coast. And I lead a team of data analysts here at Moss Adams. There are about 15 of us, and we focus on building management insight dashboards for our clients, most of whom are in the middle market, 500 million and below in revenues. And really excited to be here today to talk about some of the things that Aible and ourselves have been doing together.
Thanks so much, Matt. I'm Jonathan Ray. I'm co-founder here at Aible. Started my career off designing factory automation equipment and went back, got my MBA, cut over to the business side of the house, where I've really focused from that point on using data and analytics to drive outsized results for my own organizations and others. And on the Aible side, we're really helping customers take that journey, moving from kind of a traditional BI and analytics world into predictive and really drive outsized results for their organizations. And Matt, if you want to kick us off on some of the stages that you use to line out to help your customers on their journey.
Sure, Jonathan. This is one of my favorite slides to talk about, and especially in the middle market, I think a lot of companies are still trying to become more data-driven. And we tend to break this out into 3 major stages. The first stage of becoming a data-driven organization is what we call the heavy lifting stage. It's where it's mostly spreadsheets, honestly. It's where companies are probably downloading tons of data from relatively strong ERP systems, existing platforms that track their sales and their inventory and those bits and pieces of running the business, but they tend to not do it very well. And especially on the reporting and analytics side, they lack significantly functionality to be able to do what if scenarios and deep dives into what's happening in the business. So what we've done is tried to help companies work through that heavy lifting stage and move to more of an emergent stage. But on this heavy lifting side, I just want to talk to it quickly that it's quite inefficient when you're using spreadsheets. I think most of us really love spreadsheets because they're so powerful, and they have changed, especially on the finance and operations side, the ability to pull things together relatively simply. But we all have had many errors in spreadsheets in the past. There's a ton of opportunity cost when you're running spreadsheets to be able to download and manipulate them, and then you've got to check them for formulaic problems. And they're just risky, especially in the finance and transactional area. And from that opportunity cost side, it is extremely challenging for an individual who's probably quite capable to spend a good 20% of their day massaging a spreadsheet, footing it, cross-checking it, those sorts of things. And so they could certainly use that time back to make more strategic decisions. So we tend to help companies.
Absolutely. And one of the other things I want to throw out there is there's no shame in being there. Right? You think you're alone, you think you're the last person who's running their analytics primarily off of spreadsheets. I guarantee you are not. And we help customers come over to the newer age, if you will, time and time again. But it is still the status quo for many organizations, and that's okay. You don't get disqualified from taking that next step if that's where you are today.
Yeah, well said. And to move from spreadsheets, though, there is some basic things that companies are doing, like understanding their data culture, understanding where data is located, especially trying to identify opportunities where they might be able to pull it into a tool like a Tableau or a Power BI or any of the numerous platforms out there today that let you pull that data in an automated way and start to make dashboards on it, do trending, eliminate the heavy lifting component. And that really moves you into the emergent stage, which is where you're maybe having opportunity to set up a data warehouse of some sort. You can automate reports coming into that warehouse and set up standard extracts that people can use to review the business functions. And really the impact of that is being able to make better, faster, data-driven decisions, drive higher quality in your business, and expand your data culture. And you will see things like dashboards coming out of this area, and good cloud-based solutions are available. Aible is one of those cloud-based solutions we've been working closely with. All of that starts to make you more emergent. And then finally, when you move into more of an optimized stage, this is where you start to focus on the areas like predictive analytics, forecasting, augmented forecast analytics. These things are really what we're kind of humble actually in our own way, because we know we can do a lot with what we have related to reporting and looking at the past, but we are still learning and finding our way in how to better predict the future. And I'm sure most people can recognize where you want to get partners and people who've done this more and can work better and implement this more readily for you, and have charted some of these paths for us. And so we have definitely worked with Aible, who is all over this particular optimized phase. And it's pretty exciting to see what their tool sets are able to do. And ultimately, when you couple that with the historical information that we're able to get from the systems, you have these advanced forecasting systems out there that give you the what and when you should do activities, and couple that with the history of what has happened. You have this perfect loop, this continuous iterative loop to be able to make decisions and then see the impact of those decisions and improve your business processes. And it's quite an exciting time to be in today, where tools like Aible can help quickly go to this optimized phase. Jonathan, anything else here?
Yeah, I think one of the fun points on this is, predicting the future has always been hard, but it's getting a lot easier than it has been in the past, right? We've always tried to do it, right? We try to take the patterns that we've seen in the past and extrapolate those out. But what we're getting into as this optimized stage starts to become more the status quo, we are able to leverage these technologies to help us all take that next step.
Great. So this is the other kind of interesting way to present data-driven organization stages. And I guess before I was thinking in terms of being able to predict things in the future, I was really just looking at the past. And I was actually liking what we were doing in the past, because we could see what happened. We could understand why it happened. With the tools like Tableau and Power BI, we could dig into the detail from these ERP systems, and actually it's quite powerful, right? I mean, a lot of companies struggle to even know what happened and why did it happen. But now in 2021, that's sort of table stakes, right? Those things come and are part of the core services that almost any successful company today has already got to be doing if they're in business. But being able to predict when things will happen and prescriptively, provide insights on what you should do going forward, those are the big challenges that are still outstanding in my mind with the tools that are available in the BI space today. And so we definitely are trying to partner with firms like Aible that have out-of-the-box tool sets that can couple with the powerful BI tools that we already have today, being descriptive and diagnostic. And so this really does lay out the full spectrum of the types of analytics that are out there. And just realize that third parties like Aible we want to partner with them, because they provide great services and analysis that we're not able to do without teams of data scientists. We're a relatively small, focused group, and working with best-in-class teams like Aible really help us move forward into these predictive and prescriptive areas. Anything else on this, Jonathan, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think the great thing is what what we do as an organization on the Able side, and what teams like Matt's over on the Moss Adams side is, the Moss Adams team, they know their customers' data, right? They get in there, help understand it, help their customers really realize what they can get and what the value is in that data. And many of them are asking now, how do I take, again, that next logical step? How do I get into some of this newer stuff that I've been hearing? And some of the most important things in this space is it's not throw away everything you've built to this point and try to reinvent the wheel, right? If you ever get into a situation where you're moving along a predictive journey and someone tells you that up is right and down is left, right? Run away, because business still operates like business. This is just one more tool in your set that you can use to get that much finer a point on the actions you take. And that's really where a lot of these relationships are very important, because it's that continuum. It's not a breaking change. It's just taking that next logical step. And with that, what we want to do is set up for you the 6 power moves for the analyst. And this is version 2.0. But really just helping folks understand how to take that journey. The vast majority of customers we work with have never done a single project in predictive, do not have any predictive running. And that is really the market that we're set up to serve. If you are sophisticated, happy to work with you as well. But I think the truth of the matter is most of us have not really gotten there yet, or most of the organizations out there have not gotten to that point. And so what we're going to walk through is, how do we get into prescriptive dashboards? How do we take what we've been doing for years and really take it to that next step? How do we use automation to do just that much more with our data science? Or even if we don't have any data scientists in-house, how do we start to get some of the value that we could get from a data science team, but with our team that we do have available? Starting with the data you have, right? This is that story of, why are we working together, Moss Adams and Aible? It's because 9 times out of 10, we're starting with the data that's just already there. It's already in the dashboard. It's already in the systems you're using. It's just taking that next logical step. And then getting into some of the more fun sides of things, and doing simulation testing, figure out what could happen under different conditions, and get value from every piece. This is not spend 3 years building some grand cathedral. This is really about every step we take, we're going to be learning and we're going to be getting value out of our data that can help us day to day, right? Some of the most exciting things that we do is often start to dive into the data, and then an hour, 2-3 hours later, we're having a conversation with the customer and they're taking action on that initial run, on the initial findings in the data. How do we get to that point? And then also, how do we completely change the game in terms of timing, right? We need to stop thinking about 2-year, 3-year projects, right? That's not how the world works anymore. How do we actually break this down to 30 days to be able to get that value out? And this next setup, Matt and I could probably go on for 3 hours about this as well. Dashboards are incredibly powerful tools, right? They show you a lot of what's going on in your organization. But Matt, I've never seen a dashboard that has, prior to predictive, I've never seen a dashboard without a predictive model behind it tell you what to do in terms of the next step, right? They will inform what's happened before. We as humans can make that next logical step, but they're not helping us, or haven't historically been helping us take that next step.
Yeah, Jonathan, the thing that was really insightful when we started to engage with you was your concepts around factors and KPIs, and our dashboards have KPIs all over the place, right? But where our dashboards have the KPIs, but you talked about the factors that could then move the KPI, and that was like, wow, that is really what executives and people who are trying to affect the strategy of the company want. They can see the KPI, it's going up or down, that's a fact, right? But then how do we make that, how do we change that, and what should we focus on to move that the most effective way with the limited resources that we have? That was the game-changing things that I was really impressed with what Aible can do around that. So yeah,
Yeah,
It takes the
and
dashboard.
Matt, that's a great point as well. Like I know in my own career, I started focused primarily on traditional analytics before I cut over to more of the predictive side of things. But a lot of the times I was just watching my dashboards and it did feel like I was a passenger, right? I was a passenger in my own company and yeah, didn't know which lever to pull. And that can be a very difficult feeling. It is really, as we move to that predictive side, it's not just trying to have a crystal ball to know what's coming next, but it is what lever can I pull now that has the highest likelihood that it's going to pay off. And if not completely mitigate a slide, potentially at least help neutralize it and maybe even start moving things back in a positive direction. So absolutely spot on. And this is that journey, right? It's moving from the descriptive to the prescriptive, and oftentimes in the same set, right? We talked about earlier how dashboards don't always or most often don't tell you what to do, but you can actually bring these two pieces together, right? Where the predictions start actually feeding into your dashboards, oftentimes the ones you're using today, and really help inform and make much more powerful the insights that are being applied and used day in and day out. And one of the other things we've seen happen on that side is change management can be difficult. If somebody's checking the same dashboard every day, one of the things we often recommend is just augment it, right? If you have a standard fixed chart, oftentimes you can just chop these up a little bit, make them stacked bars, and you can see things around insights of where the predictive thinks you're going to be successful with your outcomes, where perhaps you're not, to make that much more powerful. And we do have the ability to go beyond just the dashboard and put things into context in your CRM systems, ERP systems, or elsewhere, because not every insight has to be consumed in a dashboard. They always look better in dashboards, but they can be consumed anywhere where someone has to take a decision. And that's the real piece, is moving from looking at a dashboard and asking questions into looking at either a dashboard or a record and being provided some guidance and recommendations. And I think the last piece I have to say on that is guidance is not forcing someone to obey the machine. And to me, this is an important piece, is this is a tool. It's supposed to help us. Just because it gives a recommendation, we may know something it doesn't. It is still on us to go out there and engage with the system to see where we think it's good or not. And I'll get to it a little bit later on, how we want to engage with these systems to provide them feedback to make things even better.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly say that the on that dashboard there, like personnel and trouble tickets, it's valuable, right? You can see where your activities are happening and like the layout of your personnel structure. But I always recognize that only goes so far, right? And so how should we organize our personnel? What should we do next to, say, reduce the number of trouble tickets? Those are the predictive things that these dashboards just don't show, and why we're quite interested in teaming with Aible to try and identify the key factors that can adjust those components and maybe make a strategic adjustment to those tracking items that we're showing in the dashboards.
Yeah, and Matt, those trends are usually where we meet. Oftentimes for us, our customers come to us and say, I can tell you right now what's going on with a huge chunk of our customer base is they've been losing people, right? Their regrettable churn is increasing. They're seeing that trend coming on the dashboard. But again, they're back there saying, what lever do we pull? And we get into these conversations where we start to help work with their data and figure out, why are people leaving, right? They saw the trend slide on the dashboard and started offering retention bonuses for anybody they thought was at risk. Well, but that didn't work. Why? Because, in one case, we were working with nursing staffs and they were burnt out, right? Throwing a few extra bucks their way wasn't going to do it. It was, what did we find in the data that could help them be a little bit more stable, have a little bit more certainty in their lives, particularly through COVID, where everything is uncertain and uncontrollable? Number one answer to get them to stick around was stabilize the shifts. Let them choose a stable shift if they'd like to. And those types of things are, again, that what do you do next that's not behind the dashboard? Those are some of the things that really come out with that predictive. So next piece is, again, a lot of folks getting started don't have armies of data scientists on staff. Matt threw out the size of organizations that they work with. Oftentimes you don't have data scientists in some of the regions. They all go to Boston and San Francisco, and then they get sucked up by the big tech firms that have armies and armies of data scientists. Right. So if you want to be able to do this stuff and you don't have data scientists, or you have limited data scientists, so you can only do a project or two at a time, right? The important thing to understand is there are technologies out there, Aible being one of many. We of course think the best, but this isn't the 90s anymore, right? We're not struggling just to load our Excel spreadsheet, right? The computing power has increased substantially, and automation techniques have allowed us to get a lot deeper. I would claim that I'm not a data scientist. I get accused of it a lot, but I'm an automation engineer with an MBA, right? And I was able to get into my data and really understand what was going on. Now I use my analyst background and my automation background to build a lot of cool stuff within Aible, but I'm not the data scientist, right? But I would not be in this position were it not for technologies like this helping me achieve some of my goals. And when it comes to a technology standpoint, what the technology is doing is breaking down the tasks that go into an entire project and helping us through this entire sequence. It starts with the business use case, right? And oftentimes I've seen way too many times where the project starts on the data science side, right? It's got to start focusing in on what the business is trying to achieve. This is again why Moss Adams and Aible work really well together, is focusing in on what is it that the organization needs to overcome and building out those requirements so we can provide appropriate guidance. This is built into the system within Aible. And then much of the data science is automated, going in and creating many, many different models with different strategies to allow us then to engage and select the strategic approach that's right for the organization. And then the final piece in this is you can do all the work setting up these models, and that last mile problem of connecting them back into your system of record or back into your dashboard is often a months-long project on its own. We have greatly simplified that to make it so we can run these end-to-end solutions, oftentimes with the technical components just taking a matter of a few hours rather than days, weeks, or months. This is the number one thing I hear. I honestly joke. We struggle not against different competitors or other solutions in the market. We struggle because most everyone, when we start having a conversation, they come back and they say, my data is not ready. Right? It feels much like if you've ever gone to your friend's house and they open the front door, you walk in, their house looks immaculate, and they say, sorry for the mess. Right? They've spent the last several weeks trying to get the house clean, or several days getting the house clean, and they walk in, they're still embarrassed because it's not perfectly spotless in every corner. Right? That's the realization. We need to come to terms with the fact that our data is not perfect. I don't know, Matt, have you ever seen a perfect data set?
Definitely not. And especially from historically, you can kind of get there, and we spend a lot of time iterating to try and fix the errors. But ultimately, if you run back any bit of time, the errors are all over the place, and maybe we're getting it better as we move the dashboards and clean things up, but there's never a case of perfect data.
Yeah, and the problem is people keep entering data and people remain to be people. And so even if you spend all that time cleaning up that data, as you go forward, I can tell you, as soon as my friends leave the house, my kids emerge and magically there are plates, dishes, and toys everywhere, right? It doesn't matter, right? Humans are going to have things that are not perfect, because as long as we're in the mix, right, the only perfect data sets I've ever seen have been spit out by machines, and those often aren't particularly interesting. They fill in all the fields, but even there are problems. But we've got to get over this pursuit of perfect data, because if we chase that, chasing perfection is never a winning strategy. And we need to let ourselves be okay with data not being perfect. Now, with that, there are a lot of things that people feel or honestly, even that others out there in the space have been telling them are required. Your data has to have everything complete. You can't possibly have a missing record. That's just not true. Again, as we were saying, there is no perfect data set. There are always missing records, right? A very close complement to that is data quality, right? There's always going to be a situation where people are entering things improperly, there are typos, things are miscoded. There will always be situations in which the data is incorrect. And we have techniques in our system that allow us to work with that, because we don't like to call this stuff dirty data. Everybody comes in and says, my data is dirty. No, it's not. Your data is realistic. It looks like what the real world data looks like. We lean in on that and say, we're going to use techniques. So when your salesperson types in the incorrect data, when someone in your HR group puts the wrong information in, it's not going to destroy the system. It's still going to work. It's just going to be perhaps with a caveat that there's some missing information that would be helpful if you were to put that in. Now, the next piece I get into is quantity. And I think this is the number one question I get asked in Q&A sessions. So I'm actually speaking to it in this one for the first time, is how much data do I need, right? And we've seen success with down to a few hundred rows. I don't recommend it. Typically, we're looking for a few thousand transactions to get something more robust. But a lot of groups are out there telling you that you have to have hundreds of millions of rows to be able to get anything out of artificial intelligence. And that's not true. It is true if you want artificial intelligence to figure out the world without human input. And that's the critical flaw, right? If you want a system, if you want an artificial intelligence system to decide and run the world without any human input, then yes, give it lots of data. But I don't recommend doing that either, because what's much better is working with a reasonable data set that you have available and using our own intuition and understanding of our business to fill in those gaps so that we don't get into a poor situation. Next piece is security. Oftentimes, you can't share the data externally, or you can't even share that data set internally with your team because it is sensitive data. One of the great things about our technology, what we do is we allow you to keep the data set in your cloud infrastructure. We bring the code to the data instead of the data to the code. And through that, we enforce things like k-anonymity, where we're not allowing anyone to see individual records. This often opens it up so your organization, your team can see the insights, but not necessarily see every detail, right? Not see every record that may be too sensitive to share, but your team can see the insights and the patterns and work off that data set and get value from it without you having to expose that most sensitive data. And even working with the likes of Aible or Moss Adams on any of these projects, we don't have to take possession of your data because, again, we can log into the Aible platform, we can see these insights and share those without having to take possession of that data. And then,
yeah, Jonathan, I just want to say that was when we were contracting with you, we hit the the security wall head on, and our firm is super sensitive. We have sensitive financial data and client data and personnel data. And so we're very hypersensitive about protecting that, especially when a client's entrusted us with that data. Why would we then ship it off to, say, a third-party cloud-based provider? How do we secure that? And back and forth, the iterations we did with your security professionals gave us the comfort that it was indeed, so as it was on our cloud instance of it, we could leverage your tool set, but secure the data on our cloud instance. I was very impressed with that setup, and yeah, I think you answered that.
Yeah, it's been super helpful for us. I can tell you in former lives working for some of the the biggest software firms out there, our security reviews have gone easier with Aible because of our architecture than some of those organizations that have been around for a long time and are dominant in the space. It's been pretty incredible. So glad that was helpful in getting our relationship going as well. Last two pieces here, really, just get down to the details of connectivity. Everyone feels like they have to boil the ocean and join every bit of data together in their system. We often just start with a single table because we work in a lean strategy. Let's fail fast. Let's succeed quickly. Let's take what we have available. Oftentimes that's a single table and get started. We can always join more tables later and get more robust data sets, but let's start learning, let's start getting value in that 30-day window as opposed to waiting. And then Similar to quality and other issues, this uncertainty, well, what if I have an anomaly? What if there's an outlier in my data set? Again, we have controls for that, and we surface those things up there. So you can take a look at it and say, oh yeah, that's a problem. Have easy control to edit those things out. So you never end up in a situation where you're working with a black box. Everything is transparent. So you don't get stuck in situations that can harm the business. Next piece I like, this is one of my favorite quotes because it does speak to what we all want to do, right? We all want to walk into the room and know the answer, right? That's what we get paid for. That's where we're proud in our achievements. But what if you could do a bit more? And I just got back. I was in Las Vegas last weekend, and one of the things that struck me is if you've ever watched professional poker on television, the television broadcast has all the odds for every player's hand actually winning, right? And it's sitting right there indicating, based on the number of cards left to be turned over, what the likely outcomes are. And what if one of those players in that room could have that information in their dark sunglasses as they're playing? They would never lose a tournament, right? It's an unfair competitive advantage. And that's really what we lean into with this type of predictive technology is, what if you're the only one at the poker table who has all of the odds reading out to you at any given point, and it's just up to you to decide which bets to take? That is the type of what if scenario planning that we really empower with these technologies. And when it comes down to it, I said you don't have to feel bad if you're still in the heavy lift phase, if you're still getting your analytics going. But with that, you may have to worry about it a few years down the road, because we're getting to the point where 43% of companies are using artificial intelligence for at least helping them with their scenario planning. And it's still a bit hit or miss right now with a lot of the technologies that are out there. Only 65% are seeing a positive impact. From our customer base, we're seeing over a 90% satisfaction, delivering value to pretty much 100% of the customers we engage with, showing them that path to value. So, you're not in the minority yet, but it is time to really start to take it seriously. And, at the end of the day, we do see that the companies out there, we're still using a lot of the MBA stuff, right? SWOT analysis, quarters 5 courses, those sorts of things. They're still the status quo, but these are things that are going to be modernized, and really we're going to see over the next, well, we're doing it day in and day out right now, but over the next few years, it's really going to see a pretty heavy shift in this area. So it's a really good time to get on. And over on the right-hand side is just an example of one of the applications where, Aible's not just giving guidance. It's telling you, yes, you should take this action or not. What it's not doing, this is a sales example, it's not telling you if you're going to win it or not. And that's important. It is telling us that it's worth going after, meaning that your bet is likely to be in the money, right? And it's then giving us ways that we could improve on this outcome. Right? If I reach out to this person on a Monday or Wednesday, I'm going to have a better success rate than if I reach out to them on a Friday. So now I can take the appropriate action. And Aible is also giving us the reasons why it's selected. What are the good things? What are the bad things about this opportunity that are leading it to recommend that we take this action? And then the final piece, which always makes me smile, is this personalization. I'm not somebody who loves notifications. I don't necessarily like getting 50 reminders for everything. We give teams the ability to set their own preferences, to take more recommendations or fewer recommendations. And that also feeds back to the system to help identify, as we're running our optimization and our scenario planning, if we created assumptions that sent too many leads to the team and they have reduced their settings, then we may need to adjust back and be a little bit more conservative with what we expect the teams to be taking in terms of inbound actions that are addressable, to make sure we balance it out appropriately. And then, getting into this ROI, right? This is one of the biggest things that I think we all struggle with is, okay, this looks interesting, this looks exciting, but how can I actually ensure that I'm going to get financial benefit out of this activity if I choose to invest in it? And there are lots of ways. My favorite back in the day was the nearly literal back of the envelope calculation over a beer. Well, okay, you got so many units and we're seeing the model is 3% better. We've gone one step further and really set up Aible to put that KPI throughout. So we're not just saying, all right, here's a KPI, we're gonna run a model against it. We are giving users the ability to project what we're likely to achieve and then track that throughout. And this is a really, really important piece. Nobody in the market does this other than Aible, and that is tracking if people are actually following up on the recommendation. And the reason why we do this is because change management still matters. It's difficult to put these systems in place, and particularly you put it in front of somebody who's been doing the job for 30 years and say, okay, now this computer tells you what to do. No, don't do that. But we do need to track compliance. And there are a couple of things we look for, right? Most of the time, if people aren't following the recommendations, they will underperform. That's kind of predictable. But the other thing we see is patterns where folks outperform and don't follow the recommendations. Guess what? That's where we learn and we improve the system, because if somebody can outperform the system, we want to learn from that. System gets better. It learns those things, can now help use those patterns to get things out in the field. And what drives us crazy is so many groups try to worry about the nth degree of accuracy. How do I get 0.0001 better in my classification? Once you put any system out into production, your compliance, your team's going to follow up on the recommendations probably no more than 2/3 of the time. And that's a good application. It's not uncommon to see 20 to 40% follow up on the recommendations. We have to work change management in parallel with the model. And now all the while, the team's going to be complaining about the model, saying it's stupid here, it does the wrong thing there, right? Again, that's where we learn and can build on this to get it to a better place. And most of you don't know where to get started, right? And typically something bad happens if you say, hold my beer. But in this case, just the point of this sentiment is get started, right? Because the only way you end up in that hold my beer catastrophic scenario is if you don't tell someone to hold your beer and you sit there for the next 2-3 years. That's the point in which the really embarrassing negative outcome happens. In this case, it is good to take a leap and dive in and start moving sooner rather than later, to make sure that you aren't left behind and you are starting to build that muscle to help get your organization where it needs to be. And so the last power move here, power move 6, is move quickly, right? Figure out what you're going to do in the first 30 days, right? Focus in. We talked about the KPIs. Figure out what those KPIs are. Once you determine what is the most important KPI for your business, then set up a business sponsor, get that individual to lead the project just as you would any other engagement, and get the business team around that to make sure that they're all driving towards the same outcome. Get those timelines down, get your benchmarks in place, because we always, if you're going to determine what your ROI is, you better determine how much you were making before, or we're not going to have a delta to get the from to. And then we've got to get the rest of the team, the broader organization, in to validate, because I can tell you that the second biggest challenge we have is people come in and say, well, no, that's not real. Those aren't the right numbers, right? That's why we built some of that scenario planning in, because people can have different opinions. It's important for people to have different opinions. And so we can trade those off, do some A/B testing, try different combinations to see what works best for the organization. And that's just critical. Again, anyone who's worked under any lean design principles, move fast, those sorts of things are just critical for how we go to get value in this space. And then final piece here, I just wanted to call out that we just last week signed a really exciting opportunity for our prospective customers with Intel. And Intel is actually going to sponsor up to 25 immediate impact projects. And this is going to be at no cost to those customers who sign up, but it is limited to those customers. So please do get your sign up at that link. to get signed up and in the running for those, because I don't suspect they're going to last more than a couple of weeks here. But that is something that's available now. And with that, we do have a satisfaction guarantee. We make sure that we get our customers to value. And in this case, we make sure we get our customers to value, and you don't have any money on the table. But these are some examples of customers who have come and paid for their own immediate impact projects and the types of returns that we get. Now, most of these are, moderately SMB to mid-market companies that we're showing here. We just recently started working with some larger organizations where you do start to see those returns get into the multi-million-dollar range. But the important thing here is focusing in on that KPI, getting the appropriate focus and team around it, and starting to use some of these new technologies to see how much we can get in terms of gains. And they typically range from a modest few percent, 2-3%, up to over 20%. But again, just step back and think, all right, on my most important KPI, what would 5% mean to me? And is it worth moving forward and getting something going right here? So that's all I had to go through. Matt, any other points you wanted to bring up, or Vijay, any closing thoughts?
And just wanted to thank you for your partnership, Jonathan, and the Aible Corporation. It's been really fun to take a very nebulous, what do I do next? How do I get to be more predictive, and to iterate back and forth with you on how to make that happen. It's been a great partnership. Thank you, and good luck out there.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. It's been great working with you guys as well. And I'm loving doing these presentations with you guys, and just excited what we can continue to do together, and just having fun across the board. So thanks so much for joining us on this one.
Yeah, thank you both, and everyone on the webinar. Thank you for joining and spending time with us today. As we went through, the role of the analyst really is to help catapult the organization with not just the skills, but also the tools and technology that are out there to really elevate the role and make you a more prominent figure with all that you do. Thank you again, and have a great day.